raising that we didn't need to, bring in any third parties in electricity provision for our country. There are many of you who are interested in that subject and are sending us messages and saying that that is bad, we don't need it. But it looks like we've gotten to a point where already gone a little far with that. Well, Mama Yaga disagrees that we have gone far. YK Ansayabwa says that privatizing ECG's management is a wrong move. It will always increase tariffs. It is an insult to us as a people. It will only increase tariffs. We are facing the problems of privatization of the energy sector here in the UK, with tariff increments killing consumers. And there are many others who share his view and say a number of things about that. Okay, now, Ghana beyond aid. Listen to the president.
The change in our fortunes will only happen when our economy improves. Since I became president, I've been advocating for a Ghana, indeed an Africa beyond aid, and I'm keen to have the support of all of us in this enterprise. Nobody needs to spell it out to us that the economic transformation we desire will not come through aid.
Right. He took time to explain or sort of define what he means by a Ghana beyond aid. Are you buying into it, or is familiar rhetoric? As Deputy Minister of Justice and the Attorney General Department, what do you understand to represent the mantra Ghana beyond aid?
Thank you very much, and thanks to your cherished listeners once more. Now, it's to start with, it is not a mere rhetoric. To start with, fundamentally, it is not a mere rhetoric. And you see, our economy has become one in which is business as usual from independence. And we are moving along a certain tangent that we're not weaning ourselves off donor support and etc. And so what happens then is that mostly our development agenda slows down, or it is dictated by the availability of those funds. If we continue along that trajectory, then what we envision for ourselves in 20, 30 years may never materialize, because we live because somebody's magnanimity, is what takes us on, or aids us on. So what His Excellency the President is seeking to do is this. It is time for us to break away from that mentality of relying on aid. Sometimes you have a budget that is heavily funded by foreign donors. At the end of it, if there is a slight hitch in the international world and these donors are unable to fulfill their obligations, then all our indicators, projections, and etc. are thrown off board. Basically, what His Excellency the President is seeking to do is that, was saying in this particular mantra, is that he's not saying that, look, we don't need anybody to give us anything. That's not the concept. The concept is, what do we do to break away from this mentality of always ensuring that most of our budgetary allocations are funded by donors? What do we do to go beyond that? What do we do to ensure that we give true meaning to what our forebears had anticipated? What do we do to ensure that our development agenda is not dictated by the availability or otherwise of donations from foreign nations? This is the concept. So His Excellency the President, within that context, segments it. He looks at education as one of the ways. And so he talks about the free senior high school concept and what it can do for us. He looks at industry. He looks at agric. He looks at manufacturing, ICT, and etc. And remember, that one of the fundamental errors we continue to commit, and that's why off air I was discussing with you about a book written by the very learned Ace Ankuma, in which he states very clearly that one of the reasons why perhaps we are where we are is as a result of our over-reliance on natural resources. We have gold, we have timber, we have bauxite, we have manganese, we have everything, yet we are where we are. What's the fundamental reason for this? You go growing these things, which sometimes some of them are even affected by nature, rains and etc., like cocoa. And then the market is also determined by certain forces out there. So we run into difficulties. Then somebody from the advanced nations will come and provide just some services to us and takes away hundreds of millions of dollars from us. Something perhaps our entire year's export may not be able to get. Somebody just comes to provide us with service and gets away with that. So if we have to do that, which His Excellency the President is advocating, education will have to be one of the most important investments that we have to do. So that we get people who are experts in ICT, we get people who are experts in manufacturing, we get experts in all spheres of endeavor, so that in addition to the natural resources, we can have service provision. So that we export this for hardcore dollar to be able to move away from this heavily donor-dependent status that we have found ourselves in. So His Excellency the President is rallying a clarion call for all Ghanaians to ensure that our yearly reliance and over-reliance at that on foreign donations or cap-in-hand begging to cease. And you see, it may not be done overnight. It's a systematic process. You have to. It is a thought-through principle, which he actually initiated.
Yeah, his critics have been asking that he's been globe-trotting. What's he been up to? Is it not?
We live in a community of nations, and we have to share ideas, my brother. And remember also that it is not going to be a sudden thing. It's going to be over a period. It doesn't mean that because His Excellency the President actually stated this principle, tomorrow morning we will no longer accept donations or will not go looking for donations. We have to gradually, with ourselves, with a concerted principle and lay down ideas. And something, I don't know whether you listened to His Excellency the President.
I did.
If you did, his speech was comprehensive. Perhaps longer than anticipated. It was for purpose. It covered all facets of our endeavor as a nation and his vision, what he can do for us to actually actualize that principle, Ghana beyond aid, so that it doesn't become a mere rhetoric as critics would like to portray. And so he gave the various indications as to what will be done in the various facets of life.
Yeah, he said that.
He
said, fellow Ghanaians, on this our 61st anniversary of our independence, it is important to remind ourselves that around the time of our independence, we had peers such as Malaysia, South Korea, and Singapore. Our per capita incomes were very similar at around 450 United States dollars in 1960. And our economies were dependent on the production of primary commodities. Today, these countries, once our peers, have significantly transformed themselves into industrialized economies. Income per head in Singapore is now at 51,431 United States dollars. South Korea at 29,115 United States dollars. And Malaysia at 9,623 United States dollars, compared to Ghana's at 1,000, pathetic, 152 United States dollars. We are still dependent on the export of primary commodities, as was the case at the time of Gordon Gattisberg. We must admit, sadly, that in the area of economic development, we have underachieved relative to our peers at independence. Then he goes further and to illustrate to us the need to pick ourselves out of this doldrum and get to a Ghana beyond aid.
Absolutely. So he sets the basis for it. He doesn't say it just from nowhere. He sets the basis for it, and look at the comparisons. Very intriguing. I mean, it's so ridiculous if you compare our figures to that of our peers at the time of independence. So they must have gotten certain things right that we didn't get right. And I mean, I have told you from the beginning, the premise of whatever I said, that it was over-reliance on natural resources, which are exhaustible anyway.
Some have said a Ghana beyond aid, which is taking resort or having resort to Nigeria to assist it fight corruption. That's not going to be a Ghana beyond aid.
But please, let me put this in perspective. I've heard some mischief, social media and etc., that if we have to let Nigeria help us fight corruption, then we are not on the right track and all. And they're looking at the indicators over the years. Please, the speeches that were made, what I gathered from the speeches, were not that Nigeria is coming to teach us how to fight corruption.
Right.
Some kind of collaboration between us. For example, we should not have policies and programs in place to facilitate people looting from Nigeria here and the other way around. People looting from Ghana and sending same to stashing it in Nigeria and etc. So there's going to be a collaboration between these two states to ensure that whatever achievements we have in Ghana in fighting corruption, Nigeria benefits from that. And whatever achievements they have in Nigeria in fighting corruption, we also benefit. So a kind of collaboration. It was not going to be a kind of teacher-people relationship. That's not what was said at the Independence Square on the said date. So we should get that right. It's a collaboration we need to get into in order for us to take the fight against corruption to another level. No doubt. I mean, nobody can run away from the fact that His Excellency, the President of Nigeria, since he came into office, has been at the forefront of the fight against corruption. No doubt about that.
Right.
His Excellency Nana-Addo hasn't hidden his revulsion for that particular act known as corruption and all that. So if these two great leaders meet and they are sharing ideas and inspiring us as to what they intend to do to fight corruption, all we can do, or the least we can do, is to encourage them to take it to another level. Because all the indications we are talking about, the issue of the fact that we are talking about Ghana beyond aid, we will never go beyond aid if 50% of our resources or more go into private pockets rather than channeling them into development. We will never be able to go Ghana beyond aid if there are a lot of leakages which people exploit to enrich themselves at the expense of the nation. We will never be able to go Ghana beyond aid if we watch on and allow people to plunder our resources and exploit the economic potentials that we have for private gain.
Okay.
So we need a collaboration between these two countries and beyond to take the fight against corruption to another. And remember, particularly I was intrigued that the guest of honor specifically singled out the Office of the Special Prosecutor Act as one novel piece meant to take the fight against corruption to another level. Again, on this platform, I had stated that I had a rare opportunity of interacting with major U.S. Justice institutions over a period of 10 days. And they had high commendations for the OSP, the Office of the Special Prosecutor, because even in those countries, they have ad hoc measures that they put in place as and when the issues arise. We have a permanent office. And as it takes off, if we all lend support, and in collaboration with the Office of the Attorney General and Ministry of Justice, the fight against corruption will be taken to another level.
Right.
And Ghana beyond aid, for me, will never, ever be a mere rhetoric. It will be a reality. If His Excellency the President's vision, all of us buy into it and work towards it concertedly.
Kwaku, maybe just bits to start on this note, because you haven't heard, justifying the Buhari, offer of assistance and the reliance on to take some support and inspiration from him. So clear that, in a bit for us before we move on to the Ghana beyond aid proper discussion.
What?
Buhari has taken over, and I think so far we haven't heard much that he's been able to do in fighting corruption. Of course, we have heard about the former oil minister who stole millions, and they've been able to retrieve a lot of that. As we speak, there are about over 50 plus, homes or businesses that are said to belong to her. They've been able to retrieve. Unlike us, only 51 million we are running around, we can't retrieve. So, you say there's justification for taking inspiration from Buhari.
Well, did the president say he was taking inspiration from Buhari? Or did Buhari say President Akufo-Addo should take inspiration from him? I'm not sure that was the kind of contest that was put out there.
He eulogized him for the corruption fight.
Who, President?
Buhari, President Akufo-Addo.
Yes, but you've just given us a classic example of what is happening in Nigeria. I'm not sure they've been able to tame corruption as a monster there. They haven't done that. But they are taking steps to retrieve state assets or monies that were stolen by members of a previous administration. And this oil minister's thing is classic.
Right.
I mean, you know, Nigeria, when you talk of corruption, then you are talking of a real monster.
Yeah.
And they're dealing with it. That action, yes, can inspire some developments here. There's no doubt about that. That's the context in which I understood the Buhari thing. And I thought was really a cheap shot by those who raised it as an issue, in my candid opinion. Okay, it's the same context that previously President Akufo-Addo had gone to the US to pledge to help join the US, cooperate with the US to fight terrorism. And people say, come on, you are not able to fight your armed robbers here, you are going to help somebody. That's uneducated, it's uninformed. And he's not the first Ghanaian to actually pledge his commitment to the fight against terrorism in the world. He's not the first Ghanaian president to do so. President Mahama did so, President Mills did so, President Kufuor did so, and these are documented. All we do, look, you can share intelligence as part of the fight against terrorism. Am I wrong? We pledged to help Chad to fight the terrorists who are creating problems in Mali and the rest under President Mahama. So it is an international agenda. So if President Buhari says, I will support you to fight corruption, corruption could also be transnational. The proceeds of corruption cross the border to
and
different
that we could also say that the two of them were elected on their promises to fight corruption.
Yes, so it's a natural course of events. It's not an issue to raise and ridicule. I was worried about the attempt to ridicule that matter, when indeed we know we are confronted with a transnational phenomenon called corruption and crime of all sorts of character. Let's go to Ghana Beyond Aid, if you permit me.
Yes.
Yes, see, as a vision, I'm for it. Indeed, I realized that the president went ahead to say Ghana and indeed Africa beyond aid. That's Nkrumah's vision. Essentially, the point is that times have changed, so methodologies may change. We're not confronted with the same challenges, population and all those things have changed, so methods may change. Indeed, philosophically and ideologically, the party that President Akufo-Addo leads really doesn't share much with Nkrumah in terms of the philosophy and ideology. But don't forget, the world has moved a bit to the center. And you have a situation where capitalist-oriented, or if you like, liberal democratic-oriented party like the NPP have affected some social things. Yeah. The NDC being social democratic, they've privatized our industries more than any other party in our history. The ideological rigidity is no longer really in vogue, even though you can still say that extensions. I am with the president on this. But you see, the challenge is, how do we go about it? How do we get everybody on board? Good, when you hear him speak, this is a fantastic speech. And when it comes to the Ghana Beyond Aid there, he's very articulate, very coherent. You know what the man is talking about and what he wants. But you need the whole nation behind you. Considering the kind of politics we do in this part of the world, there's a huge challenge there. Getting a consensus on a program. As we speak, I don't think there's a blueprint as such. You can deduct some of the things the president wants to do. In terms of immediacy, what the immediately practicable things. The idea
digitization.
what I get him saying, oh, look, Let's make sure we are fighting corruption. That's why we have the special office of the special prosecutor. We need to ensure that the right information bill comes into being before the end parliament rises.
Right.
You know, we need the galamsey fight must be strengthened, because you need to have clean your environment, make sure your water bodies are clean. These are immediately practicable things we ought to do, and do well with consistency. That's what I get. Immediate economy, performance of the economy, making sure there's fiscal discipline and things. These are immediately practicable things that many governments have tried to do with varying levels of success and failure. But I get him saying that, look here, this is what we must immediately do. Let's make sure that we've arrested any economic decline. We are performing better in a more efficient way. Let's make sure that the monies that we are losing to corruption, we kept them. He even brings in the sole sourcing thing. And I was thinking he might have an ally in Ayariga. Maybe not in totality. But Ayariga talks of sole sourcing being that if we took it away, we make savings. He may explain it in a better way. But the president is also talking about sole sourcing, some that are over abuse of it, that have been removed, so they bring some savings. They may have some coincidence of ideas there.
He was clear about his problem with still dealing with a Gettysburg economy. Yeah. Raw materials.
Yes.
And we benefiting very little.
Yes, and that's, look, I'm holding here the 7-year development plan of Kwame Nkrumah. The speech he made 11th of March 1964. Nana Addo is talking of the aluminum smelter and all that is here. That's how the Volta River project came into being. All those things were part of it, the integrated thing.
Yeah.
And then Nkrumah was determined to operationalize and execute those things. And he began. It isn't as if he just talked about it. The Tema Harbor, the Tema Dry Dock and things, the Tema motorway, it's all here. It was an integrated vision with commitment to execute it. Well, that's history. Now we are here back again. Many of the things the president mentioned, I'm saying, it's here. This is hindsight.
But like you say, one difficulty will be the fact that there's no blueprint to this. He's just been talking about it and getting
the advocacy,
applause for it.
Yes, he's determined, focused advocacy. I think we must move one step forward. Let's get a roadmap that is printed out. Let's get political parties, civil society groups and things to buy into it. You see, these are critical issues. Somebody will raise an issue that, look, so what's the National Development Planning Commission there for? What have they been doing? There was a 40-year development plan. People will come up with all these issues that it doesn't appear as if you share in the 40-year thing. So what is it that you are talking about? What was in the 40-year thing? Could it have helped us attain Ghana beyond aid or Africa beyond aid? No, these are critical questions. I say first and foremost must be the support for the vision. Beyond the support for the vision, since we're getting people to commit, let's start putting certain things on paper and let's see how people can congregate around a blueprint. Otherwise, it will mean that it is just the executive, the government of the day, its vision and seeking to push it. It may be very difficult to actualize that at the end of the day. You need to carry the people along with you. You need to carry the political parties along with you. You need to carry civil society along with you. But otherwise, the things he put across here, I can tell you, I don't see any Ghanaian patriot or an African patriot being opposed to such vision.
Okay. So there ought to be a blueprint in which you factor in one district, one factory, and all of those things.
There was this point about alternative financial model, how to leverage our both sides.
Right.
And he tells us that will be concluded this year. Implementation beginning this year. You see, these things, if can be done, would inspire others to say that, look,
that is for an efficient railway system.
Yes.
Okay.
Infrastructure.
We're trading the bauxite for that.
Yes, he says that. But we need to be sure the extent of it, the scope of it. These things, yes, government executive can put it out there, it goes to parliament, parliament can approve it. But bottom line, beyond the legislative approval, you need to carry the nation forward.
All right.
Ahead, along with you.
Okay, so we take a break here. When we return, you'll hear from Mahama Yariga and Clara Berry. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis show. And let's quickly hear what Mahama Yariga has to say about Ghana beyond aid. Is it new? Is it familiar rhetoric? Is it something that you feel will bring us to our destination, to our destiny?
Well, I mean, the debate on aid has been there for close to half a century, to be frank with you. President Akufo-Addo is not saying anything new. You can call it development assistance. The whole debate about development assistance actually has formed the basis of colonization. After colonization, the assistance to developing countries to develop their infrastructure has been based on the notion of aiding those countries. And how do you aid? By providing financial assistance, by providing technical assistance, institutional support, and etc. There's the other dimension of the aid debate, which is aid versus trade. You know, how will rather helping developing countries, opening up the markets of developed economies to the products of developing countries, enhancing exchange, rather contribute more to the economic development of those countries relative to handing them aid. So there's also that dimension of the debate. So we can go on and on and on. But as we speak, after 2013, official development assistance from the rich North American and European countries totaled about 136 billion United States dollars from these countries to developing countries across the world, not just Africa. But Sub-Saharan Africa is one of those countries that has been a major candidate in terms of development assistance. Now, there are those who are for aid, there are those who are against aid. Both of them, in my opinion, have some merit in their positions. If you consider the history of the exploitation of developing countries by developed countries and the wealth that has been built over the years in developed countries, there is a case for saying that they must transfer some of that money to developing countries to help them fast-track the process of development to meet the basic needs of their people. We can't allow them to keep all that money, starting from slavery to colonialism and how, you know, a dependent economy was structured so that natural resources were moved from here to go to the metropolis to facilitate the development of the metropolis, how they killed deliberately certain industries that were emerging so that they can boost their own industries and turn us into producers of raw materials for their own industrialization and sending us back and truncating our process of development. The argument is that today we can't just sit by and allow them to enjoy all that money and say that we don't want aid. We must take the aid.
And when you
in
take
fact,
it, what do
the
you do
argument
with
is
it?
that the aid must increase. As we speak, the European target, in fact, the UN set a quota that the aid, that's official development assistance, gross national income ratio should be at least 0.7% for the developed countries. We must fight for that to increase. Should it be more than 0.7% of their national income? There's a group that is against aid, and their argument is that, look, aid hasn't really helped developing countries. And in fact, in most of the cases, aid has gone to enrich the political elite in developing countries because they take the money, they squander it. It doesn't trickle down to the sectors where, like you mentioned, education and healthcare and, you know, critical infrastructure that should help in the development. So they think that aid should not even continue. They should end it. So there's that debate. Now let's get to the specifics of President Nana Akufo-Addo, he's saying all the right things. And I'll commend him for saying them. And like my senior Kwekubaku has said, he's not the first to say them. He's saying what Nkrumah said. So if you can imagine the time from Nkrumah to date, I'm sure when you go to Achampong and he talks about taking over the commanding heights of the economy, he was basically saying the same thing. And when you go to Rawlings and his revolution and the rhetoric of the left at the beginning of the revolution, they were all saying the same thing. The question is practically, what should we do? I have given some practical proposals. I have said that by President Nana Akufo-Addo's own calculation, if you take the 2018 budget, foreign component in terms of the finance of our budget is about 4.7 billion. 4.7 billion. Just last year, he says when he limited sole sourcing by just 50% thereabout, he was able to save 800 million Ghana cedis. And I say, if you abolish sole sourcing altogether, you can save 2 billion. Already half of foreign finance component of your budget is being addressed. Now, let's get to the exploitation of our natural resources, the mining companies. Let's go back and look at the negotiation, how that whole sector is managed, how they determine the cost of production, which they then extract, and then what is left is the basis of sharing, between them and the government of Ghana. Who is watching how much they say they spent? So let's go back to those sectors. Let's take something like the ECG concession that we're discussing, where some people are just going to come here and help us fix meters in our homes, and read the meters, and then bill, and do some minimal investment in the infrastructure for distribution, which was already in existence. They just need to retool it, and they're going to take a certain percentage, because that's what the concession is all about. Cut that. If they want to assist us, let them help us with the technical assistance to retool ECG. If you go around checking all these leakages like my brother is saying, trust me, whatever we're getting as the official development assistance today, in 2 years' time, we could get that by just plucking leakage in almost every sector of our country. And as for the aid, in addition to plucking and saving, we must take the aid from the developed countries because we have contributed to the development of those economies and we must benefit.
Okay, I may return to you, but Clara, the president spoke about private sector development, education, digitization of the economy, which people say that is how to get a smart economy, infrastructure development. He spoke about value addition activities to cocoa, to gold, bauxite, manganese, oil, and so on. Job creation. He says, he wants to see vigorous job creation in public sector, beginning with recruitment of 100,000 young men and women in the Nation Builders Corps, among other things.
That reminded me of the Workers' Brigade.
Yes, among other things.
The National Reconstruction Corps.
In your, examination of this Ghana Beyond Aid, what is it and how is it achievable if it's not a rhetoric?
Okay, for me, I believe that Ghana Beyond Aid is achievable. What we need to achieve it is commitment to that. And in addition to the commitment, of course, there are certain adjustments we have to even change, particularly in our thinking. Mm-hmm. Now, we have to remember, I've always said that it's interesting how we have come to believe that we are people who are not capable of so many things. We seem to have forgotten where we've come from. We come from a stock. Our ancestors were people who survived and thrived without aid. They traded, they were successful, they were great people. Then along the line, of course, we had that interrupted because of the issues of colonialism and slavery. And once again, they demonstrated capability when they embarked on that struggle for independence. After independence, we seem to have been on course because I think the Ghanaian people had a clear vision of what they wanted. And if you look at the vision they believed they were capable of, they didn't intend to live on aid. There wasn't any part in the struggle for those who wanted independence for the reason that they wanted independence so that they can be beggars. They wanted independence so that they could be in charge of their life and live in prosperity. And if you trace it into even the 1992 Constitution, that vision is very clear. So we come from a stock of people who were clear exactly what they wanted. The problem is that along the line, we lost focus. I think at some point we just completely lost focus, and we seem to have started doing a completely different thing altogether. So yes, it is capable, but we have to revisit some of our values. We will, like Kweku said, you have to keep everybody on board. There are ways and policies of influencing behavior. So we will have to identify the particular values that we probably have that inhibits our growth, and then we would have to adopt particular values that particular policies aimed at redefining those values or changing those values and all of this. So in short, what we need now is to regain that focus. And from what the president is saying, you can see that there is, at least from the speech, there is some commitment. If we keep to it and we regain that focus, I believe that we can achieve a Ghana without aid. The work, of course, the work is enormous.
How is it affected by the skepticism that you read around? The
skepticism is understandable because, of course, over the years we have made statements of here and there, and we haven't lived up to the statements. The effect is that now when you say something, we are skeptical. I think that is understandable if you also know the history that we have come from. So it's understandable that people are skeptical. But what we really need, fortunately, the president is in the saddle. What we really need, I believe, if he starts taking the action and then he starts taking the relevant steps that we need. As for hearing something like we need to add value, we've been hearing this forever. Anytime, even personally, anytime I hear we need to add value, like, yeah, right, yes, we know. Let's just add it. So it is time for us to now start reporting on the steps that we have taken. It is no longer time for us to keep talking, this is what we want to do, this is what we want to do, this is what we want to do. It is time for us to start hearing that we did A, and this is the result of what we did. We think it has achieved or it has not achieved. That is one. And I think the key thing we need to start telling ourselves is to stop telling ourselves the lies we've told ourselves for a long time. The lies that we are poor, the lies that we are inept, and the lies that we cannot. We can. Our only problem is that we haven't actually believed in ourselves enough. So where we have gotten to is to believe in ourselves enough and admit what is not working and work at it. Education, the free SHS, is brilliant. In spite of the issues that we will have, we keep working at it. The free SHS has brought access. Now we also need to talk about quality. What is the curricula that we have for our students? What kind of training are we giving them? Are we giving them the particular training that in a global market today they could not just succeed in Ghana, but they could go out in the world and dominate? Or are we giving them the kind of training that is going to make employing them difficult? Because sometimes the issue is not really about lack of jobs. The issue is about employability. Do the people that we produce through our academic system, can we just take them and they will fit into the positions and the type of economy that we want to create? So our education we have to look at. Apart from that, we also have to look at training. We have a lot of youth. If you look at the youth, for example, although we have always had more or less ad hoc policies directed at the youth, I haven't seen a consistent, deliberate policy or plan targeted at maximizing the potential that the youth have. If you go out into our problem, I always say the youth, just go out into the Ghanaian population and the enormous talent you see. There is so much potential. And just like the way we waste other resources, it's the same way we waste the resources, the potential that we have in the youth. A lot of the things that we talk about, there are so many things the Ghanaian youth can do. The proper thing we need to do is how to harness that, how to channel it, and how to train them to survive in the global world. We talk about ICT. And of course, the joke somebody made, that if you look at the way we are training our people in ICT, is to make them consumers, not innovators. So we cannot train people to live and behave like consumers and expect them to be innovators. If we want to train innovators, we must be deliberate about it. So it is not likely that you can be teaching a child on the blackboard what a computer does and expect that child to grow up to be somebody who can innovate.
There are people who get into government or they get into public office, and they are the ones who are supposed to give the critical support for the realization of this. But there's a good number of them who go there for what they can benefit personally and
Yes.
privately. How is he going to get all of these people?
It's
you know,
part of the
around
mindset that
this?
must change. That's why I think the president has to focus on the mindset. I don't think if we don't have an
But he made
attitudinal
that point
change.
in the speech.
Yes. If we do not have an attitudinal change, trust me, we are not going to reach far with this Ghana Beyond Aid. It will become a slogan. So we have to target the attitudinal change. Why do people go into public service and behave that? Because we treat public service like the spoils of war. That's it. What I talked about earlier on is the sense of entitlement. I am occupying this position because I know A and I know B and I know C and they have my back covered. It doesn't matter what I do. So once I believe, because I have these connections is the reason why I'm here, I know they have my back covered. Very few people, like I said earlier on, would put a lot of effort into it. If you look at this, the kind of values we run will determine the kind of output that we get. Right. Meritocracy, every society that has made it, it has been on the back of meritocracy. Okay. The reason being that meritocracy pushes us to give off our best. You need to keep working hard. And because you need to keep working hard, you will improve on yourself. You will be professional. Okay. And you will give off your best. So the entire society gains at the end of the day.
What would you say to people like, you know, Mama Yaga has been positive about this, except that he feels you can't win yourself out of aid or because we have a right to it. People in his party, the opposition, for example, you hear them acting critical and being doubtful. How can we get, because you need the entire nation around such a goal. How can we get over
this? It can be done. Like I said, of course, I can't say that in the few minutes.
Because but when they were in government,
yes,
the now in government, which was in opposition, didn't believe anything they were trying to champion. Yes. So they would do the same. How does it scuttle the goal?
No, but no. If you target the attitudinal change well, you can reach out to people. Okay. Because as a nation, I always come back. We have to have national values. We have to have certain core values that we all congregate around.
Right.
So because we are all Ghanaians, and I believe at the bottom line, we all want Ghana to succeed.
Okay.
I don't think there's anybody.
Thank you very much.
Who doesn't want
just
Ghana
remind
to
you that
at that point.
Josephine's cake that we got for it's still around this year. So get ready.
Can we demonstrate to the public?
Josephine, 50th anniversary. It's for her. We are doing it for her because she's an ardent listener of this show.
For accountability purposes.
What is that?
The public must see us cut and share the cake here.
Oh, okay, thank you. My guests have been Abdul Malik Kubaku, editor-in-chief of the New Crusading Guide newspaper. Clara Berry Kasati is a lawyer and teaches the law at GIMPA. Mahama Yariga is MP Boku Central and chairman Subsidiary Legislation Committee of Parliament. Joseph Dindiok Pemka is MP Timpani and Deputy Attorney General and Minister for Justice. We spoke to Philip Kwesibwa, being a lawyer and banker and former principal of the National Banking College. Samson Ladia Yenini, my outfit as always is given to me by Latida. You can always have this by checking out what Latida has. Nathaniel Atto is on Joy Sports Link right after this, and you just can't miss what is going to happen on your Joy Sports Link. Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon.